welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find me at NBC Sharks or on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find my work at Twitter at halfwall_hockey, at my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. It is training camp week, and we have an exciting podcast for everybody.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about right now how we're seeing it on, this is Thursday night, September 28th, how we're seeing how the rosters will shake out. We also will have a roster with and without Logan Couture, because that is the big news of training camp so far, that Logan Couture has not been available for training camp. He's dealing with a lower body injury, and we're not exactly sure when he'll be back.
Yeah, we're going to first run through basically the forwards, defensemen, goaltenders that are locks in the mix kind of thing, ones that are kind of on the bubble. We will create a roster, and then we'll mention some of our other observations from the games and the camps in general.
Yep. So let's just get going. Yeah, let's start with the forwards, and we're not gonna talk about some of these kind of guys that we see as locks, we know that Tomas Hertl, for example, is going to make the opening night roster if he's healthy. We know Logan Couture, if he's healthy, will be on it. So,
sure.
So other guys that we see sort of in that same regard. And like I said, we're going to start first with a roster with Couture, and then we'll talk later about who we think might replace Couture. But right now, our list that we agreed upon, sort of our locks, are Filip Zadina, Nico Sturm, Anthony Duclair, Luke Kunin, Fabian Zetterlund, Logan Couture, Tomas Hertl, Kevin Labanc, Mikhail Granlund, Mike Hoffman, and Alexander Barabanov. And so I think we have 11 forwards there. Is that 11? Let me count that again. Yeah, that's 11 forwards.
That's 11.
Right there.
I think Zadina's on that in that middle ground. I think he's probably the 11th of that list, maybe the 10th behind Labanc, maybe.
Ahead of Zetterlund too, I would say.
Good point.
Before I will say that Zadina is one player that I do want to talk about. Before camp, when the Sharks signed him, I wasn't really sure about Zadina's overall game, but what's impressed me about Filip so far is, and I actually clipped a play from the exhibition game on Wednesday. The very opening shift, he beat Adam Henrique on a one-on-one puck battle. Adam Henrique is huge, NHL veteran of a decade, right? He's the classic grizzled vet, right? Sure. And Zadina, just a combination of speed but also strength. Just took the puck, just beat Henrique to the puck. Also, his body kept him off too. It wasn't just like he just used his speed. A combination of that. And I've seen sort of that tenacity with Zadina so far in preseason and in the scrimmages. So I think that I think before training camp, I would have thought, yeah, he's probably going to make it because the Sharks signed him and all that stuff. Like he's going to make opening night, but. After watching him play, though, I have a little more confidence in that. I am still concerned, though. He's been around the puck a lot, both in preseason and during scrimmages, but not a lot of production so far. And so I'm a little suspicious about that. But
I don't know what I kind of expected from Zadina, because it's kind of been his story, I think, in Detroit as well, is that he hasn't been able to put up points, hasn't been able to score goals, that kind of thing. And that's why this whole fallout happened with him. But you're right. He's actually got a lot of hustle. He's more than I thought he would. I thought he would be more of this kind of floaty kind of sniper.
Right. Like a poor man's version of Ovechkin or something like that, right?
Yeah, and he's not. He's actually got a lot of grind to his game. So I think you're right. I think now that we've seen him play, he would also be pretty unwise because he's still an RFA and he's not waivers exempt. That I think he's going to make the team.
So. Yeah, so I think someone would snap him up. He mentioned, and I believe there were teams that were after him too. And he's not, obviously he's not making a lot too. 1.1 million. So and
a team would take him, and I think he trusted the Sharks enough in this whole process that they're gonna trust him right back and keep him.
And I think he so far has training camp still has 2 weeks left, but so far he's shown that I think that the Sharks sort of. He's rewarded. He's paid them back to the degree of that he's showed up hungry. just like that play I mentioned, he's been hungry for the puck. And you
Yeah.
can see that on most of his shifts, and so yeah, I've liked that. Just hopefully the goals start to follow.
Yeah, so we've got 11 locks there, including Anthony
Yep.
Duclair, who's a new addition, Mike Hoffman, who's a new addition, Granlund, new addition. There's a lot of new additions to this forward group from last year,
I would say, I want to add a note too about
which,
Granlund that
mm,
I've mentioned in one of my stories that Granlund, they've been David Quinn has been glowing about Granlund,
mm,
and I'll give an example of that. Actually, I think I asked about Granlund even before the exhibition games or preseason games. Granlund hasn't played any yet, but he was absolutely glowing about Granlund. And then I asked about another player, and Quinn was like, "Oh, I don't really want to judge a guy based on."
practice.
But he had already judged Granlund, and so
Uh,
I think that tells you that Granlund, I think a lot of people are expecting Granlund to come back and have a strong season. I know
mhm.
that he was disappointment in Pittsburgh trade deadline and didn't have a great year in Nashville too. But I think the expectation is that we are going to see sort of the Mikhail Granlund that we've been accustomed to for most of the last decade.
Yeah, he's mentioned it himself too, right? Like he's put a couple quotes out there that are like, "I'm going to surprise people. I'm
Yeah.
going to. I have a lot left in the tank, and don't doubt me," kind of thing.
That's
So,
that's my fault. I when I
mm.
asked him a question, I used the phrase "lost it," and he's like, "I 100% haven't lost it."
I'm excited. I think he's going to be an interesting addition, especially if Couture is hurt to start the year, because he is one of the few centers on this roster that could
I think
be
it'd be more
playing high in
interesting
the
if
lineup.
Couture is healthy because
Or
suddenly
true,
the Sharks
true.
have like top four centers that are actually you can talk yourself into Hurdle, Couture,
Hmm.
Granlund, and Sturm as your Sturm won a Stanley Cup as Colorado's 4C.
Yeah.
I think you could really talk yourself into that center group. You can't really talk yourself anywhere else in the lineup, maybe, but center
No,
maybe.
center be fine. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd have to have like Hurdle playing a like an actual 1C, which on and off Hurdle can do that. Couture playing like
Yeah,
a
they
really
can
good
switch off
2C.
Couture and
Yeah.
Hurdle as sort of the 1C responsibility, depending on
Yep.
the matchup, right? And if Hurdle comes back and has a bounce back year
Yep.
himself, which, we are kind of projecting and I am projecting and expecting.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, so it's got I'll say it's not the deepest because they don't have lots of other natural centers, but the ones that they do have are pretty good. Um, and beyond that, we have six players we've identified as or six
sorry, guys.
forwards.
Yeah, I had to leave the screen for a second.
It's
My
okay.
Mushu is taking advantage of the time of me talking and scratching herself and licking herself intensely. So I had to stop
Well,
that. So she has a
yeah.
skin problem. So yeah, so
Oh,
we
Mushu,
have to regulate that. So
Mushu.
yeah, she doesn't like
She's
me yelling at the microphone. So
she
she's
knows
just
that
getting
you're
some attention.
distracted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. So the 11 guys we know are going to be on there. We have six more forwards that are kind of like in this in between zone.
Yep.
Two of them are not eligible for waivers. So,
Waiver exempt. Yep.
yeah. So Thomas Bordeleau and William Eklund, who we have identified as like kind of on this bubble, as well as Ryan Carpenter, Oscar Lindblom, Jacob Peterson, and Givani Smith, who are eligible for waivers.
Yeah, and let's just kind of talk briefly about each of them. So I'll start first with Bordeleau. Um,
Yeah.
Bordeleau, even with if Couture is out, I'm not seeing it. I do think Bordeleau is better this year than he was last year in terms of just defensive, attention and just
Hmm.
the effort and commitment, to things other than offense. I do think that is I have noticed improvement there. I think that he has also benefited from being back at center. It does
Yep.
look more comfortable there. But I don't think it's quite enough yet, though. That he has taken. He's going to take a job from somebody, be it a 3C job, or even above that, right? But and he should be in the skill role too. I don't think it serves him well to be a fourth line center to start off either. And so there's an argument that okay, you can put, let's say Couture is hurt. put Bordeleau at 3C and Sturm at 4C, but I don't think Bordeleau has earned that, and that's my opinion. I think there's progress, but there's still work to be done there.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing because they did put Bordeleau at the Couture spot when Couture was out, so they put him between Barabanov and Duclair. And
well, we don't know. That's a leap to call it. I mean, that could have been. They could have had Granlund there. I don't know. That's a bit of a.
Yeah, well, it's not like it's just obviously training camp and practice and stuff. It's not like a lock or nothing. It's just an interesting thing. I think they are thinking the same thing you are, which is he needs to be in a skill role. So
right.
Can he
and
fit
Quinn
into?
Said that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Can he fit in there right now? And I don't know if the answer is yes on that statement. So
yeah. Quinn said that. Yeah, we're going to put him with some good players and see what he's got. And I just I don't think
makes me happy that he was
enough.
it makes me happy that he was put in that position at least. That shows me that they're also thinking the same things.
Sure.
But I think you're right in the fact that I don't think he's shown enough yet, and obviously it's still 2 more weeks, but we'll see. So the other center he's kind of battling with is Ryan Carpenter, actually, which is a blast from the past in terms of Sharks names. But
right. I want to mention too with Bordeleau that though going back to Bordeleau just a little bit that Quinn has talked about exhorted his guys to play inside and to own the small rink, which is basically the between the dots, the slot in that area, just the whole center area. And I don't think Bordeleau has been exceptional in that area. I think he's been better than he was last year, but again, though, I think until you see him to really start to take that he's not going to get like a plum spot with the Sharks, which is a top 3 center role, which is where he needs to be to succeed. He needs to play in a skill role, and so until he you see that in the AHL, until he really starts to seize on that and keep attacking the middle of the ice. Still too many of the dipsy doodle kind of passes to just hope kind of plays, instead of attacking, And there's been some plays where, and I've written about it in my game notes, there's been some plays where he has attacked, and I've liked that, and I praised him for it. But there's been other times where he hasn't, and I'm sort of seeing that in scrimmages and practices too. So.
Yeah, and there's still some issues with his defensive positioning, and he looks or can look a little lost sometimes. Is kind of the biggest issue. He's going to be probably a very late cut, I would imagine, if he is cut.
Oh, sure.
Based on the way that the roster is shaking out, and if Couture continues to be hurt, so
yeah, sure,
it'll be interesting. It's going to be a battle for sure between him, Carpenter, a few other names, Oskar Lindblom, who notably is probably is the most expensive player on the in the mix list here for the forwards. He's got 1 more year left on his deal at over $2 million. I don't know. He's kind of like a guy that they might consider to put through waivers because I don't think anyone's going to claim him.
No one's going to claim him. Not 2.5 million. Not with what he's produced. Yep. Sorry, I got to leave my dog for a second.
Do you want to speak through the microphone, or should we cut it?
Yeah. We can know how to cut anything, so it's part of the. It's mixing up the video for people, seeing my butt every few minutes.
This is why you have to listen on YouTube as well as
right. Watch on YouTube,
exactly.
So you can see my ass.
You can see Shang's butt and maybe Mushu if Mushu shows up.
Mushu will deign to show herself and stop licking herself like she keeps doing. Yeah, I need to get a cane to nudge her, so she doesn't do it. I
bought these little bean bags. They're like very small, to basically throw at my cats when they try and steal my dog's food. So
I do the cane for reach, just to like scratch her a little bit, help scratch her for for herself. But anyway, though, so we're talking about Lindblom, and actually we're gonna go back to Carpenter too. But let's talk about Lindblom first because he's the topic at hand. I think a lot of people weren't even sure why he was still playing for the Sharks last year at times. And I think the reason why he kept himself in the lineup was that Oscar is still, for all like his sort of didn't do much offensively last year, obviously, and we can see that in the stats. But even just in terms of just like chances he was creating, he just wasn't doing a whole lot there, which was a disappointment considering his past production with the Flyers at times. But he's the kind of guy that's always good defensively, always. You can rely on, you can rely on him. He's going to be in the right spots. He's always going to, his efforts, usually going to be there, very consistent. He's just a very consistent, trustworthy player. If he's making, minimum and he's your fourth line winger, you don't mind that because then he's a guy that is reliable and has a little bit of skill and that might, surprise you every once in a while from the four winger spot. But of course at, triple of the veterans contract that he's making now, obviously he hasn't justified that. It's camp is early, he's only had one preseason game. But if he can, again, I think there is still hope that he can find that game that he had a few years ago with the Flyers. And so I think that I think that if he does find that along with his sort of defensive, then if he becomes a two-way winger again, for sure they'll keep him. But if he's not, though, he still has value as a defensive winger. I guess that's the point of all I'm trying to say, that people really seem to question why he was out there. But I think it made sense. The Sharks weren't very deep at forward last year, for one. They are deeper this year, which is why he's on the bubble guy. But let's not I guess ignore what he was still good for and reliable for with the Sharks last year.
Yeah, he provides something that coaches know and can trust on the fourth line, and that's why he gets put out there on the fourth line.
Let's not forget too, and this is actually funny to bring up with David Quinn mentioning Shakir Mukhamadullin with Chris Pronger yesterday. Even though I want to stress that David was just talking about how Mukhamadullin looks visually, not his game. Anyway, though, Scott Gordon last year when he got hired, he had availability. Sharks assistant coach Scott Gordon, and he coached Lindblom with, I believe, Lehigh. Or maybe it was the Philadelphia Phantoms back then, but basically in the AHL, and he might have actually coached them in the AHL too, because Gordon was a interim coach for the Flyers. But he actually compared Lindblom to Patrice Bergeron, of all players. And again, he wasn't saying that Lindblom was, a Selke guy, a Hall of Famer like Bergeron. But I think if I remember correctly, what he specifically said was just that so low maintenance.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about him at all. You know that this guy's going to come in and give you a professional effort, take care of himself on and off the ice. Be a pro even on the ice in terms of just being in the right spots, being responsible, all those kind of things, right? And so there is a value to that. And so so there's reasons to like Oscar even if he's not scoring.
Yeah, I think there's probably a better comparable than Patrice Bergeron, just because the offensive ceilings are different. But I get what they're saying, where it's consistent. It's consistency. It's
you just don't have to worry about a guy. Coaches love that. Yeah, they can put in a guy. I mean, I love that too. I'm a fantasy football general manager, and if you can have a set it and forget it guy at running back or whatever position, right? You don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
No, man, I'm a home run hitter. I've got Anthony Duclair and Tony DeAngelo on my fantasy hockey team, so I am swinging for the fences. This is a very deep fantasy hockey league. I will mention that. It's it's insane. But anyway.
Yeah.
So Lindblom is on the bubble. We'll talk about who we think might stay and go later on.
Yeah. We'll give our sort of our final consensus roster, but let's go back to Carpenter just because you mentioned him, and then I started talking about Thomas Bordeleau again.
It's fine. We're going back to
Ryan Carpenter. Yeah, so he is always not even when he was a Sharks prospect, right? I don't think he was talked about that much. People were talking about Godobin or whoever else was around back then. than Meyer.
Sure.
Even like Julius Bergman, was getting a lot more, press.
And
And
Ryan Carpenter's still in the league, baby.
Ryan Carpenter has scratched out 300 plus games.
Yeah.
He was on the Golden Knights playoff, the first year team that made it to the final, and he had a
Hmm.
pretty decent role with them. He wasn't like a call up, like bit player. He played a pretty regular role with them, even albeit still like fourth line.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I think he's sort of underrated in all this. Like he's basically, yeah, I do think he'll probably end up with the Barracuda, but he is a player. He's also a center too, and the Sharks do
Hmm.
do lack a lot of true centermen. And so yeah, like he's a pro. He's gonna be reliable both ways, especially defensively at the NHL level. He can help you kill penalties. He's done that at the NHL level a lot. So yeah, so he definitely brings I think a good amount to the table.
Yeah. It's kind of on the downswing of his career, which is crazy to me because
True,
for
he's
some
older.
reason
Yeah,
I don't remember him being like 32, but then I also don't
yeah.
remember myself being over 30. So anyway, but yes, he's got an important position too for the Sharks, especially with Couture being out. So we'll talk
Yeah,
about that on later on.
possibly.
But
Yeah, possibly
Mhm.
important position. But it is worth noting with Carpenter, and you alluded to it, that last year he did only suit up for about 20 or so games with the Rangers. Also, too, he injured Nico Sturm in one of those games.
Yep.
But before that, though, he had been a pretty regular for like about 4 years or so running. And
Mhm.
so yeah, so he could be, like you said, on the downslope. And so that could be a strike against him. But I wouldn't count him out, though. So.
Sure. Next up is Jacob Peterson. Little younger, skewing younger
Yep,
from
way younger,
from
yeah.
Ryan Carpenter. He also is, even though younger, is not waivers exempt, so he could be picked up if he's sent down. So that's kind of the fear with him is that it felt kind of like the Sharks killed it in a trade last year when they traded for Jacob Peterson from the Stars for Scott Reedy, and Peterson came in and put up like 8 points in 11 games or
Mm.
whatever he did. Um, this year or this training camp, I don't think it's been like as clear cut that he's going to be an NHL regular this year. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think he's been just okay at camp so far. He was better on the Wednesday night game against Anaheim, but the whole team was better. But he was on the first line with Zadina and Bordeleau. He thought he was
Mm-hmm.
pretty good on there. But so far during scrimmages, he hasn't been placed with, like Bordeleau has been placed between Barabanov and Duclair during
Mm-hmm.
scrimmages. Eklund was with Kunin a lot. Like some of these younger players were being placed with like kind of guys that like just the kind of the skill guys. Kind of maybe to some degree showing like the where the organization was valuing them. And Peterson, I don't even quite remember who he was with, but definitely wasn't with Tomas Hurdle, right? Like Zadina
Yeah.
was with, right? Or Anthony Duclair, like a Bordeleau was. So he hasn't really jumped out to me. And even last year, I would say, and I've said this, I don't know if I've written this or I've said it, but
Mm.
I'm pretty sure I put it out there that um, I know the media comp for Sharks fans is to think Peterson and think of Alexander Barabanov and trading Antti Suomela for Alexander Barabanov. And
Yep.
Barabanov came in and played with Thomas Hertl and Vander Kane at the end of the COVID season, put up, I think, 7 points in 9 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, Peterson kind of similar, like, Scott Reedy, kind of a prospect that, at this point, people weren't expecting so much out of. And he came in, Peterson, and played with Hurdle and put up those 8 points that you mentioned. But watching the both of them, I remembered I wrote a lot about Barabanov a couple of years
Sure.
ago. You can look back at those articles. Like I saw a lot of different things that Barabanov was doing beyond putting up points. Enough that, I mean, not like so much that he's a superstar, but I saw
Mm.
more though than just putting up those points though. Just little passes he was making, puck protection, things like that. Just sustaining plays. So not things that led to like actual goals, but things that the more you do of those
Sure.
things, they do lead to goals eventually. And I don't really see that so much with Peterson. Peterson put up the points, but I didn't feel like he made the kind of he just didn't stand out quite like Barabanov did to me. So I'm not sure. I have a lot of questions about Peterson and how he's going to impact the NHL and long term. And granted, like I didn't expect much of him last year. And of course, suddenly he puts up 8 points, right, in 11 games. And
Yeah.
Quinn did kind of allude to like, Jacob always being sort of the under the radar player, and all of a sudden he does something that catches your eye, and so he did do that in that time with the Sharks last year, where like he would seem like he wasn't doing much, but then he'd make this great pass and would lead to a goal or lead to a great chance, and
Yeah.
so he does definitely have that in his back pocket. But I will
Yeah.
say though that if he ends up on waivers, don't think he would be a strong candidate to get picked up even with his production. I mean, again, remember that trade value. He got traded for Scott Reedy. There's a reason why. These are both devalued 2017,
Sure.
I believe, draft picks. That were about to their ELCs were about to end, and so that was his value. And yeah, you can put up points with Tomas Hertl on a bad, awful Sharks team. Okay, that doesn't mean that you can you have real NHL value to a team.
Yeah. It is also, I think he's also a product, or not a product, but a kind of a casualty of them picking up so many skilled wingers.
That too.
Like,
Yep, of course.
like his role doesn't really fit when you have Zadina and Duclair and Hoffman and Eklund.
I mean,
and where's his role? Where does
Peterson
he slide
really
in?
only gets the chance because obviously Myers traded and they want to slide Eklund's contract and et cetera, like, and he doesn't have those sort of I don't know, like stepping stones or whatever, to help him to I think he's another guy too, a little bit like a Bordeleau we talk about, like he doesn't have, I don't think, much utility outside of a skill role. Lindblom, like we talked about, has utility in a secondary role, in a role player role. Carpenter has utility. Peterson, not so much. I mean, he can serve up like one great pass a game to somebody, but if it's to like, no offense to like Givani Smith, and the other 9 minutes he's not doing anything for you out there, then like.
He's gonna need to really put up points, and then in the games that he gets in the next few, he's gonna need to put up points.
Right, and just make plays too. And he makes a couple plays.
Sure.
Again, I'll give him credit on Wednesday night, but but on that same token, though, his first preseason game, he wasn't doing a lot, and so he's always has that burden of being like kind of almost like a skill only player. Like the burden is always to make plays. Then if you're not.
Yep.
If you're not doing so much other stuff, and he tries defensively, so I don't want to take that away from him. I think he's generally positionally he's fine, but
he's not like a liability most of the time.
He's not, but he's not, just his frame, that sort of thing is, his skating just doesn't make him conducive to having like a much of a defensive impact.
Mm. Speaking of a guy who has another game, Givani Smith. He's kind of like. The Sharks typically have one guy left on the roster at the end of training camp who can kind of fill this, not, it's like the modern day enforcer role, or like the modern day tough guy kind of thing. And I think it's going to be Givani Smith, but I think that's kind of
I agree. Yeah.
But
who else would it be? Not Givani Smith, because last year they had two guys in Gadjevich and VL that were kind of for one role, and under Bob at times they had both Gadjevich and VL in the lineup too.
Sure.
But in this case though, there's no direct competition. I mean, Kunin can throw him a little bit, but you don't really want him to be doing that. I'm not sure who else would even be in the discussion. So
There's always Tristen Robins, you know. He's
I
I'm
didn't want to
sure.
be mean about it, but like I wanted to put out a poll yesterday. Who looked more terrified for his life yesterday? Tristen
Oh my
Robins when
god.
Rocco Gudis was yelling at him, or if you haven't seen it, Brant Clark when Mark
I
Stone had it
saw.
like.
Oh my god. It was terrifying. Like Brent Clark
I
looked
think
like
I think
like
I think
sharp.
Brant looked more terrified.
He was
Tristan was
just
just
closer.
like
Yeah.
Tristan just didn't want to make eye contact. Tristan was just like, like I don't want to fight you, man. I'm not.
No, Brent Clark looked like he was like terrified.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I mean, obviously,
Mark Stone may
Mark,
have ruined Brant Clark for the rest of his career. Like if Brant Clark doesn't make it, like there's gonna be
he's gonna be
somebody
fine.
writing this like 5 years from
Yeah.
now. Like was that the moment where Brant Clark like decided that he didn't want it. He didn't want it. So
No, he didn't want to be a hockey player anymore.
yeah,
That was
he
it.
didn't want to fuck around because he didn't want to find out. So
No, I think he'll be fine. But it was terrifying. Anyway,
yes, it
poor
was.
Tristan. Poor Tristan too. Like that was such a. And it was just at the camera angle. It was like
Yeah.
perfect to just
And
like.
Tristan was just doing his job. The team was
Yeah,
down. He
he's
he took
fine.
an extra tap, but of course,
Mhm.
Ratko is doing his job too.
Yeah,
And so
Radko's got a job to do. So.
yeah. And I'm glad that Tristan didn't drop him. Like Tristan showed something dropping it in the rookie
Mhm.
faceoff against I forget the Coyotes guy was like 6'4",
Yeah.
Coyotes tryout guy.
Yeah.
But that's like some college kid that's big.
Yeah,
That
it's different.
yeah, than Radko Gudas. So-called the butcher.
Don't want to do that. No,
You
not
know,
a good
like
idea.
if I got forced to play an NHL game tomorrow and there was like three guys that I didn't want to line up against, or like if I had to fight somebody, and
Yeah, would be the
he
guy
might
named the
be he
Butcher.
might be among those three guys. I'd be like, you
No.
know what?
If you're the guy you're going up against has a nickname, you're in trouble.
Exactly,
If it's
exactly,
the boogeyman,
exactly.
if it's the butcher, if it's the sheriff, like there's
I feel like Givani Smith would is scary dude himself, but I think Givani Smith would like hold back. He'd be like, you know.
He's got a
He
nickname.
didn't ask for the smoke, like he just for some twist of fate he's on the NHL ice. But Rocco Gudis, I'm not sure if Rocco Gudis would have that sense of empathy.
Yeah.
we'll
Oh my
we'll put it
God.
that way. I'm not sure if he would have that. So
Tristan
I'm
escaped
not.
it alive, and
Yeah, and
you know,
So I'm not. Yeah, I don't want to be too hard on Tristan. Yeah. So I would have
he
looked
made it
down
out.
too and been like, "Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Gudas.
I'm gonna leave. Yeah, yeah.
I'm just trying to make the
immediately.
NHL, Mr. Gudas. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
so.
I'm just trying to do my job. Please don't hurt me. Anyway. All right, so Giovanni Smith, I think he's just for the role, I think he's gonna stick, but we'll talk about that later
We'll
too.
talk about that later. Yeah.
And the last one, our Lord and Savior William Eklund. He is notably his contract has slid twice now, so this will
Yes.
be the first year of his actual ELC, which is crazy to me. Like that it's still going to be 3 more years of his ELC. I don't think it could slide anymore. I
No.
don't believe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this is it.
This
Right?
is
Just
it.
twice.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that William Eklund deserves to make the team. But last year there was some considerations for being waivers exempt and being sent down. So it'll be a battle, but he's shown a lot throughout these past or throughout training camp and everything, and also coming back from injury.
Yeah.
So
I mean, last year too. Of course, the contract slide thing was a big thing, right?
sure.
Like Eklund when he came up was one of the Sharks' top best six forwards, right? Let's keep in mind too, like with Bordeleau though, that Eklund, even though Eklund has more of a B game and defensive game, that you don't want to waste him on your fourth line. So he needs to
Yeah.
be he has to
Top
be among
9.
your top 9, top 6 or I'm sorry, your first 6 wingers, right? Your top 9 wingers. So when we look at that, then it becomes a little bit more not quite as certain. And I do think I predicted in the off season, and I'll stick with it. Even though Eklund hasn't been as thoroughly impressive as I think some fans may think, right? Like his first preseason game, David Quinn wasn't as enthused about it as some people were, and I can see kind of both points. That I did like Eklund's sort of game away from the puck, which I think will help him obviously secure an NHL spot in that game. But offensively, though, he wasn't making, and the whole team, it wasn't just Eklund, but the whole team wasn't great offensively that game, and that's still going to be his calling card. He's not going to make it as a fourth line grinder, of course,
No.
and so. He needs to, in this camp, he needs to start putting together a couple of games here where it's like, okay, he absolutely deserves to be in the top nine of the Sharks. Because let's just count really quickly and let's include a Couture in this. Top nine guys that are probably ahead of Eklund or right there, right? Duclair,
Sure.
Couture, Hurdle, Granlund, Hoffman, Barabanov. So that's 6. But then you get to guys that are going to be right there. Kunin, LeBanc, and so that's 8 that I've rattled off there, right? And so Eklund will have to, and Zadina too. Zadina's in that bubble list too, and so Eklund's got to be ahead of one of those guys. And in the offseason, I thought that I predicted him ahead of LeBanc. And I had kind of a interesting fourth line that I projected with Stern, LeBanc, and we can talk about that later. Somebody else, but so that was like not your normal fourth line, but
Not really, no.
but anyway, so I'm not trying to take anything away from Eklund. I still like him a lot, and I do think that he will make it. I think he will show in the next couple of weeks that he absolutely should be in your top 9. But right now, though, if the season started tomorrow, and Couture was healthy, which he isn't, but like if the season started tomorrow, I would be a little bit not as sure. So this is more my confidence that Eklund is going to rebound from his first preseason game, which he still scored a goal too. So let's not forget that. So
I don't know.
But anyway,
I think that was not a good game by the Sharks. That was a really, really bad game.
Yeah.
And I think Eklund was one of the few forwards that was doing anything like constructive.
Yes.
And he also scored a goal. So I don't know. I get that Quinn said he didn't have he looked okay. Or
let me
something like that.
Devil's advocate though is that in that game, William Eklund was a first line winger in that game. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's expectations of that. And
who was his center? I don't even remember.
It was Sturm.
It was Sturm. Okay.
Yeah, and then he also had Halton in too, which was a little unfair too because you're basically putting an 18-year-old guy, deer in the headlights guy on first line, so Eklund does deserve a little bit of a pass for that. And like I said, Eklund did some good work away from the puck, and so that's gonna help kind of secure his spot. I would think, but
to me, and maybe just my eyes are bad, but I think he showed enough in that like very strange role with a fourth line center and a OHL winger to show that he could like move forward. I think what you're saying, like that he's gonna progress through this training camp. I agree. I think that's what the next step is he's gonna keep taking off basically. But I don't know. I think he's gonna make it. I hope so.
I do think he will eventually, and we'll talk about that. But like, he is like kind of on the bubble list for a reason, though. So
yeah, and he's
waiver exempt. That's a big thing, Like if for example, like let's just look at this list really fast. Let's say like Oskar Lindblom shows something in the next couple of weeks, and you're like, oh, this is the Oskar Lindblom that we gave $2 million to, and this is the Oskar Lindblom that the Flyers gave $3 million to, right?
Yeah.
That's a better player than that could be a better player than William Eklund. It probably is a better player than William Eklund this year at least,
Sure.
And so something like that happens, right? Or Jacob Peterson all of a sudden starts just uncorking play after play, then okay, then you weigh like, losing a guy that is looking pretty good out there, in waivers, right? Or, a guy that you can just kind of put down there and not worry about and let him, kind of dominate in the AHL another year. So,
all right, that's forwards. And again, we're going to project our 13, 14 forwards or so.
Yeah, our 23-man roster. We'll get to that at the end here. So let's talk about our kind of our locks on defense. So we're not going to talk too much about it. Kyle Burrows, Matt Benning, Mario Ferraro, Mark-Edward Vlasic, and Jan Ruda. And I just want to say quickly about Burrows, because Burrows might be a surprise to be on here. They signed him to a 3-year contract, and people will be like, "Oh, they overcommitted to him." But if they gave him a 3-year contract, that means that there's a team out there that would probably give him a 2. Actually, you said Vancouver wanted to bring him back for a 2. So you throw him on waivers. I think there's a good chance, because again, 1.1 million only. You can bury that
Sure.
if he's bad. I think there's a team that would pick him up. With all the things he brings, sort of that things that people want on their bottom pairing. Penalty killing, a willingness to always play gritty and hard and block shots and be hard to play against. And so anyway, so he makes our top 5.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
let's.
And he's a right,
Oh, that helps
righty,
too.
like
Yeah.
positioning.
Yep. Like Benning too. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk about sort of our bubble guys, and there's a lot of them. We have
Oh
more
my
bubble
gosh.
guys. We have 7 of them than we have
Locks.
locks. So the first one is Henry Thrun, and
Mm-hmm.
Thrun is a guy that. I predicted in offseason that I thought he would make it over guys, and Thrun is waiver exempt, so they can
Sure.
just put him down there, and without a worry. But I thought Henry was pretty good last year in
Mm-hmm.
his cup of coffee, and I think that he's shown that he's made some improvements so far in this preseason. He is a guy that has had a good preseason,
Mm-hmm.
and a good training camp and all that kind of stuff. And so, he's talked about gains made in his skating that are subtle, and I don't know if I've quite seen it, but you said that you have, right?
Yeah, he looks to me a little bit faster, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit quicker, because that was kind of some of the issue was his ability to match speed and everything.
Right.
He looks a little quicker. Yeah, for sure. And it always helps when you're like first preseason game, you get 2 goals and assists, and are being power play quarterback for a team that has pretty much no offensive options on defense. So I don't know. I'm really hoping Thrun makes the team. I think he's just going to keep progressing. And he's on the border just because there's, again, 7 dudes for 3 spots. Essentially, 2 to 3 spots.
Yeah.
And he's one of the few dudes who can be sent down without being claimed.
Right.
So is there a chance that he ends up in the AHL to start the year? It's definitely possible. But I think he's just trying to prove that he shouldn't be sent down.
Yeah,
Basically.
yeah, I think that's a challenge for Eklund and Thrun, that the
Mm-hmm.
team is, even if it's not deep in like super high in talent, it is deep enough in NHL competent talent that those guys do need to be better than those guys in a way,
Mm-hmm.
show that they must be in the NHL.
Yeah.
And I think Henry will show, even on the power play so far. And granted, it's just preseason, but he's been good on it.
Yeah.
He hasn't been exceptional in any sort of
He's
way,
smart.
really. But he's moved the puck well.
Mm-hmm.
He's been solid on it, and so we'll see if that carries over to regular season. I'm not sure. Not really projecting. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
see him necessarily as being a power play guy so much in the future. Maybe a PP2 at best. But yeah,
Yeah.
he that challenge of being the PP1 guy in preseason, he has acquitted himself well in that, which speaks to just his overall improvements, with his skating too. And David Quinn talked about today about stick positioning, so defensive, his defensive game. And so he is a guy that I
Yeah.
think will make it. Next guy we have is
So
Jacob MacDonald. Oh,
last thing is also
sure.
that basically they could keep him in the NHL for a while before he actually has to go through waivers. He can play 72 more games before he needs to go through waivers. So, he can play essentially the entire year, and there's no risk.
Yeah.
Like if they were like, oh, in 10 games we need to send him down, they could just send him down.
Right,
So,
right.
and with 10 other guys, that like there's going to be enough defensive depth that if you want to try out Henry Thrun and then you
Yeah,
have
or if you
your
lose one of these guys that is not
sure
waiver exempt, you have other guys. It's true.
a
Yeah.
bunch of other ones. So I think
Yeah.
they might keep him just for that. Like you should, if he keeps showing in the way he is, like just to see like if you've got your future top, whatever defenseman there. So
Yeah, I mean,
like
again, I still think that I want to kind of tamp down expectations, and
sure.
we had a discussion about Mario Ferraro a little bit earlier in the same way, where I think people
Hmm.
expected too much out of them because of an impressive early showing. Like I think
Yep.
Henry also I think this with Mario still, and I thought this before too, that he probably ends up being at best like a middle pairing defender, a 3-4
Mm-hmm.
defender on a good team. Mario hasn't done that, but I think Mario can still do that. And I think with Henry, same thing. And so if Henry
Agreed.
is thrust into the lineup, right, and is
Mm-hmm.
your top power play quarterback out of necessity, let's not start thinking that, oh, he's going to be a
Yeah.
top pairing guy. I don't, let's not expect that out of him. I don't think that's fair to him. If he
No, I
does
don't think
that,
he has that
yeah,
dynamic skill level or
even just
anything
the
that.
skating, right?
Yeah,
Skating's
skating.
better,
Yeah.
but like skating, I don't know if it would ever be quite good enough that he is like, obviously he's not going to be Eric Carlson offensively, but even just like a combo guy that
Sure.
skates and like is offensive and defensive enough to be a top pairing guy, right? Like a
Yeah.
Slavin, I don't know, right? Like I don't know, I don't think he's got that in him. Maybe he'll prove us
No.
wrong,
But
but
he's
I just
smart.
want to. He is very smart, and so anyway,
Mhm.
I just want to like
Yeah.
lower expectations a little bit,
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that he's like gonna be your number one D or top line D. I think it's
I mean,
but
he
if you
might
can
be one of the
get
Sharks, just like Farrell has been, but he
yeah,
probably shouldn't be though. And
shouldn't
yeah,
be.
so
But there is something to be said that like if he does make the team and he hits the ground running and he's good enough that they might keep him. Same with what they did with Ferraro. What for better or for worse, what they did with Ferraro, where he just never left because
yeah,
he was good enough. Anyway, let's keep moving on. We got a lot of defenders.
yep.
Jacob MacDonald is next.
Yeah, McDonald's a guy that I think he's okay as a seventh demon for a team. But yeah, like I think he's obviously a guy that is like sort of
Hmm.
with the numbers game and whatnot, even without Thrun, he seems like a guy that's likely to be sent down. He's been in the league for a couple of years. He obviously has had AHL success. He scored 20
Sure.
goals there, but that just hasn't translated for whatever
Hmm.
reason. And you see him sometimes on a part, like he's in the right place. He
Yeah.
sometimes can fire it, but it just hasn't translated to production and consistently being dangerous offensively. And so yeah, so I think that unless he really is exceptional to close out camp here, that he is a guy that they probably pass through waivers. And yeah, I think he probably passes through unless a team really wants to add something to, they want a
Yeah.
seventh defenseman that they can trust a bit, that can, has a little offensive capability but also can defend reasonably well, or
Hmm.
somebody for their minor league team.
Yeah. What you see is what you get with McDonald. It's been that kind of he's like a tweener. He's a AHL NHL guy that um, will be that way for a few more years probably. But
Probably, yeah.
yeah, it's not. I think just based on the amount of guys, unless something crazy happens, I think he's on the outs.
And
But he
I
is
do
on
want to
this
give
border.
Jacob some credit. He defends
Sure.
well enough that like he can again be a number 7 defenseman, so
Hmm.
he's
Yeah.
not even though he has like gaudy AHL offensive stats, like I said, that hasn't translated at all. So that's not why he's up in the
Hmm.
NHL, because it just hasn't that hasn't materialized. But he's credible defensively, and so yeah, so I think he can make somebody a all right number 7, and so I don't know. So we'll see.
Speaking of someone who's credible defensively and can be an all right number 7, Radim Simek is next on our list.
Yeah, but the thing with, of course, the difference here is McDonald is making the veterans minimum. He's like your
Yes,
Jacob Magna. Shimmick is making 2.5 million or close to that, and
2.25. Yep.
2.25, right? 2.25 million. And so he's a guy, and this might make it more attractive to try to send him through waivers. Like there is no chance anyone's picking that up. Like zero,
Nope.
zero.
Yeah.
And so, like Lindblom, it's going to be very, very safe to run this guy through waivers. On the other hand, though, Shimmick, when he plays, and we watched it, right? Like the problem is that he's always hurt, but when he plays, he plays consistently high energy. I've heard that he's
Physical.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, physical, always willing to engage. Guy who will drag you into the fight a little bit. Always giving it his all, and skates pretty well. Smaller guy, but like he's strong for kind of like Farrell. He's strong for his size, very strong for his size actually.
Hmm.
And yeah, and also too, I was talking with Drew Remenda. Drew was at practice recently, and he was very very complimentary of Shimmick's practice habits. And so I think that's something too that it helps, like just sort of that intangibles kind of factor, and just a model guy at practice. And so he's a guy that might make it based on these variety of things, and also too because his competition isn't, even though they're decentish players, they're not great angel defensemen. None of these names, or they would be in the lineup, right? For sure. And so at this point, and so Simek might make it just because, yeah, like he does bring a number of things to the table, and his competition isn't blowing him away here.
And yeah, the other thing is that he might, because he is frequently injured, he might be injured, and then he could just be kind of on the IR list
Right.
and not
We'll
have to be
see.
passed through waivers.
Yeah,
kind
but
of
right
thing.
now, he suffered an injury, actually, speaking of, on Wednesday night against Anaheim. But
Yep.
David Quinn said today that he believes that it's not too serious. And even though it may not be quite day to day, it's not going to linger too long, probably. So I don't know if
Sure.
that the Sharks will be able to kind of delay a decision on Shimmick because of that.
Yeah. We'll have to see.
Yep.
Next one is Shark, who's been around for a little while, in and out of the lineup for a couple of years. Nikolai Knyzhov, who returned last year after, I don't remember how long it was. How many, year and a half, something like that,
Year and a
without
half,
playing?
yeah. I think
Yeah.
he had missed like 600 plus straight days without
Wow.
any
Yep.
NHL action, or maybe NHL action, yeah, because he
hmm
did play with the Barracuda quite a bit last year.
So came back, played 12 games for the Sharks last year, scored a goal. Um, I think so. He's got 2 more years left on his deal. They extended him, which was a pretty cool story for the Sharks, basically to keep him throughout all these injuries and then for him to make it back. It's
Right.
honestly a miracle that
I
he's
mean,
done
giving him a
so.
second year does show some faith
Yeah,
in him too. So
they rewarded him for basically his good play and
I don't think that,
all
yeah,
that.
I don't think they're rewarding him. I mean, I do think they do have some belief in him. I'm not
Yeah, I
sure
meant
if the rest of the league believes in it, but
sure.
yeah. So
Rewarding isn't the right way to put it. It's like they invested in him,
sure.
and because he battled through those injuries, they felt like they needed to give him another shot on the other end of all those things, which is great. Um, he has looked okay, but I wouldn't say he stood out in a very positive manner throughout the
Right, and
training
it
camp so
is
far.
hard for
hmm
uh defensive D-men to kind of stand out at times too, like
Sure,
it just
sure.
the role is different. It's not as obvious as a guy that, like, you know, you know, fake passes to Thomas Hertl like Henry Thrun did on the power play, and that's a highlight clip.
hmm
But yeah, I think he's just been okay so far. Mike Greer did praise him at the beginning of training camp, so it's worth noting that he thought that Knyzhov looked way more assertive, I believe he said.
mm
And this was based on captain skates and whatnot, so not actual game action. It also is very much worth noting that Knyzhov is not waiver exempt, so the Sharks will risk losing
Sure.
him if they expose him. And his profile, even though he's not as maybe like, let's comparing guys that possibly could go through waivers, like McDonald is probably more reliable. McDonald is older, more experienced, right? But Knyzhov has maybe a little more promise than McDonald.
hmm
Knyzhov is much younger, 5 years younger, and
Sure.
so his team might take a flyer on that, be like, yeah, we can just work with him for a year on an NHL roster, and see if he materializes into something. Like, obviously with Knyzhov, we kind of know his story, like the couple seasons that he basically missed, right? And 2020, 21, he was Erik Karlsson's partner. Granted, it was not a very good year for Erik Karlsson that year, but like he was there though. He was consistent and reliable. That season, it looked like it was going to be a springboard to something, and obviously that didn't materialize. But he's still big and skates great.
hmm Yeah.
And so that is going to keep him employed somewhere in pro hockey for a long time.
It's
And so,
interesting
yeah, we'll
thinking
see
about
about him.
it because the Sharks gave him an extra year on his deal, so he's got 1 or 2 years left at
Hmm.
1.25, which is a little rich for a guy who's like been out of
A
pro hockey
little,
for
yeah,
like
but again, it's
six.
under the variable HL amount, right? So
But is it like kind of protected in a way because they gave him the extra year? Our team's going to be less likely to take him because of his injury history and all
Fair.
of that. Like that, basically, they're just saying like, "Do you really want to take a risk on this guy? Look, we're waiving
Yeah,
him.
yeah, I could
Maybe,
kind of see that
maybe."
to some degree. Yeah,
It's reverse
yeah.
psychology here. Yeah.
Just in the sense of like we like this guy, and
Hmm.
yeah, like but if he gets stuck in a numbers game, like maybe, yeah, maybe,
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe.
Thinking a lot. This is a lot of
I do think
eh,
they like him.
reverse
Yeah, I do
psychology.
think they like him. I do think that like they didn't have to bring him back obviously this year. They didn't have to give him 2 years either,
Sure.
and
And they probably
there
didn't
are
have to give him 1.25
right,
either.
and there are the games, beyond the games, right? Like kind of like
Hmm.
we kind of like alluded to, like Casper Halton getting ELC, right? Like
Sure.
it's not because Haltonen is a better prospect than Quentin Musty. It's because Haltonen has leverage, even though
Yeah.
no one has said it outright, right? But
Mhm.
I'm fairly certain. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that that he exercises leverage. Say, "Okay, you want me to come over to North America? Okay, then give me this.
Yeah. No.
And so there are sort of those kind of like game, yeah, like in these kind of contracts, so you might have something there with Knyzhov where maybe like they were kind of thinking that. I'm not sure. I don't know that for a fact. I'm
Hmm.
more certain about what I'm saying about Haltonen than what you said about Knyzhov, but I do think
For
that's
sure.
possible though. I don't I would not rule that out. I do think they like him, and I do think
Yep.
that with his injuries, they sort of want to give him, some time, to
Hmm.
kind of see if he can kind of get back on track to what he was in 2020, 21.
An interesting one is going to be Leon Gawanke, who's
Mm.
next. He's on a 1 year deal with the Sharks after basically being pulled from going to Europe. He was going to
Germany,
be,
yeah.
yeah, he signed a contract in Germany and then decided to come back over when the Sharks
And
traded
they
for his
traded
rights.
another defenseman in Artemi Kenyaza that was sort of out of options too, so
Hmm.
that's kind of
So,
interesting. Kind of like the Scott Reedy, Jacob Peterson kind of like
mhm.
swap in some ways.
Yeah, so I think not the expectation, but there was some hope maybe that he would come in and be like get providing some offense because he's got great AHL numbers, but
Right,
hasn't
right.
played
20
in the
goals last year in
NHL.
AHL, and he is an
Yeah,
offense first defenseman too.
and righty as
Right-handed
well.
too. Yep.
But I don't know. I don't think he has really taken the reins so far. I don't think. I mean, the game that I saw of him wasn't spectacular. He was fine. Wasn't like any um, glaring mistakes, but he wasn't the offensive
I remember he
juggernaut
got
that I
beat wide by
expected.
somebody. I didn't like how he defended that play. I don't remember who, but
Yeah,
yeah. Like he moves the puck well. He moves the puck
sure.
well. Like he hits the whoever he's trying to pass. So even challenging tough passes, he can make those plays. I've seen that in scrimmages,
Yep.
and I think we've seen that in preseason games. But um, don't know if there's much beyond. I haven't seen much beyond that so far. Yeah, I would say he's
Hmm.
another guy that, yeah, like you said, he hasn't really taken the bull by the horns like Thrun has to some degree. And yeah, granted, was given PP1, but
Sure.
Gavanko was given PP2 the last game. I just like he hasn't been quite as impressive for sure
Hmm.
as a Thrun, and obviously Thrun offers more defensive two-way capability too, on top of so far being better offensively, even though I think Gavanka is probably more talented than Thrun offensively, but
Hmm.
Thrun's um, just sort of showed his best so far. And whereas Gavanka, haven't quite seen that yet. And I did talk to a scout over the summer that likes Gavanka a lot and thinks that he can, he said that, yeah, I think he can score 30 points if you put him in the Angel lineup, which is not incredible, but it's better than kind of what the Sharks in theory have this year.
It would be the best, highest scoring defenseman from the Sharks
Could be, yeah. So, but
based on last year's numbers, at
yeah,
least.
based on last year's numbers, obviously without Eric Carlson, but um, he needs to obviously show it in camp, and I haven't really seen it in the
Hmm.
games, in the scrimmages, the practices, and then what Quinn has said about him hasn't been anything like
Yeah.
just anything that tells you that this guy is going to be there opening night, and so yeah, so right now he's definitely trending toward not being around.
Nikita Okhotiuk got into action this week as well in the preseason game. I
Couple
thought he looked
games, yeah.
good. Yeah, a couple games. I thought he looked good.
I think he
He's
looked better on Wednesday night, but yeah,
good
yeah,
is an overstatement. I think he looked fine. He didn't look like out of his element, basically, which is interesting to me because he's kind of the not the unforgotten part, but a unforgotten part of the Timo Meyer trade.
Well, forgotten by maybe by fans, but Mike Greer has talked
Sure.
up Hotiak at basically anytime we ask about him, and so a couple times he's talked him up training camp, but also too after the trade, and
Hmm.
so he's seen. I mean, he called him a significant piece after the trade. I don't know how true that'll be. Now we get to final roster cutdowns, but I think though he is valuable to our organization, and one of the things that at least I've heard and I haven't seen enough of to not call bullshit on it yet, but what everyone was talking about David Quinn and also his teammates too. Before the preseason, just during camp itself, was that Hotiak was moving the puck well, and he scored actually a very nice goal in a scrimmage kind of breakaway,
Oh yeah,
shootout thing they
yeah.
were doing, right? It was a nice goal he scored. And Quinn was talking about, yeah, like everyone knows that he is physical, he's mean, but I was surprised by his puck moving. I haven't quite seen that to be honest, but if it is there or if it emerges in the next next couple weeks here, then he is for sure going to make the team then. And also
Yeah.
too, and this is important, he is not, even though he's just 22, he is not waiver exempt. And he is a guy because of his age, good contract too. I'm not I think a team would probably pick him up off of, take a chance on him on waivers. So
Hmm.
um
I
so
think so too. And
yeah,
I
so
think
yeah.
the Sharks want to see what they have in him,
Right,
right? So
right,
that they
right,
haven't
right,
even
right.
had a chance to really have him on the team because
Right,
he was
right, because he
injured
was
last
hurt.
year.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't think it makes any sense for them to just waive him immediately after
Right, and
not
he's
even
shown
playing.
enough so far. See, I
Hmm.
don't think he's been exceptional,
Sure.
like the next guy and that last defenseman we're going to talk about is so far in camp. But he hasn't been bad either. I think he's
Yeah.
been decent. Maybe better than okay. Like he's shown some of that physicality, and if there is puck moving with that, then
Hmm.
like I said, he's going to have an NHL job for a long time.
Yeah. So I'm excited about him. It's be interesting to see. I don't see them waiving him, so I think he makes it.
Yeah.
Um, the last guy, we're both gonna have good things to say about him,
Yep.
is the man with many
Shakir
names.
Mukhamadullin, yeah.
The man with
Or
many
Shaq,
names.
or Big Shaq, or
Or Muck or
or
Mook
Muck,
or
or Mook, or Mookie, or
yep,
Shake Shack, or whatever, yeah.
Shaq, the man with many names.
Yeah, I mean, Mukhamadullin has been excellent throughout camp, but I will caution. I've said this many times that you still see the rawness, though. I mentioned this during the rookie faceoff episode. He skates, forward and backward, very well. He is huge. His wingspan, his reach is huge. Also, all the tools are there. He also is skilled. He makes he almost all his passes are on the tape, the easy ones and the hard ones. He has he's shown a good offensive sense. His defense needs work, but he has also shown a willingness to improve on that. And he also looks like he worked on it over the summer. He looks like he got bigger and stronger.
Hmm.
And so all these things are to his credit, but he is not NHL ready, and the Sharks shouldn't do that to him. Even
Yep.
though I've asked David Quinn directly, hey, should he be in the NHL? But that's only because that's my job to ask questions. But but do I think he should be? No, I do not think so at all. And David Quinn actually shut it down today. He flat out said, I think because I think the hype, he was trying to tamp down the hype. There's too much of it,
Yeah.
obviously I asked after the exhibition game that Shakir played in, is he making a case for the NHL? My cohort, Curtis from the Mercury News, asked the similar kind of question today. And yesterday, yesterday after the Wednesday night a preseason game that Mukhamadullin didn't even play in. A reporter asked about, yeah, he is really, like Shakir is really impressed, and that's where Quinn, compared him to Pronger visually. But I think Quinn, it was actually surprising when we asked about him that he shut it down. He just said no. Like, I think he should be in the AHL. Like, and that's surprising for a coach to say, we're a week into camp.
Yeah.
Because I think he's trying to slow down the hype train, and maybe Mukudon will keep doing what he's doing and be so good that the Sharks can't keep him out of the lineup.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's done quite that so far, though, because again, all the things he's shown, he's still very raw. He still is awkward sometimes in his movements, and Quinn has mentioned this. Quinn mentioned this that like AHL is a place where he can become dominant and get confident, basically. And you're not going to do that in NHL as a 21-year-old who, weighs like 180 so pounds, maybe 190 lucky at his height, 6'4", 6'5", right? Like, it's not going to be a place where you're going to be, gaining too much. You're just going to be trying to hang on and survive, kind of, right?
Yep.
And is he good enough to do that? Yeah, he probably is good enough to do that. But is that the best thing for his development? I do not think it is. And Quinn seems to agree so. And also, too, it's not just Quinn, obviously. Mike Greer and David Quinn have been lockstep on this from the beginning that, guys should marinate longer. Guys should, maybe not dominate, but guys really need to, like, be very, very good at AHL level before they get a good look at the NHL, which is different than, what the previous regime did. And I actually talked about that in an article a week ago, right? Thomas Hurdle talked about actually after the first exhibition game that it's kind of nice that just guys aren't just being given NHL shots, And look at that list if you haven't seen that article, and I've alluded to a lot that in the between 2019 to 2022, the last years of the Wilson regime, Bob Bugner, 29 Sharks made their NHL debuts, 29 of them. And look at that list and see how many guys are still around. And you looked at the list, right? And what'd you say?
Almost, it was a bunch of dudes, is what I said.
Even you forgot what you said about them,
sorry,
right?
Yeah, it was 100%
no, that's how forgettable, honestly, in an NHL perspective, at least, that a lot of these guys are a bunch of dudes. I think Greer and Quinn have been very clear about, trying to avoid giving a bunch of dudes NHL shots. They were forced to give a couple guys shots last year because just the injuries, right? Makiniemi and Cicek, right? And then I also mentioned that, after the trade deadline, bets were off a little bit. The team was very depleted. And
almost every year that happens.
Yeah. Right, and so I thought, in comparing it to the last years of the Doug regime, I'll just mention this one last part from an article I wrote that you think about 2019, who made opening night, which kind of tells you they were kind of penciled into the lineup, there was no choice. Yeah, there was Danil Gushchin-Ozzy Ferraro, who has acquitted himself well overall. Leon Bergman, right? And then the next year it was John Leonard.
Radil.
And no, not Radil. Radil was
the year before.
Yeah, and he was an older veteran too, so it doesn't quite count. But anyway, and then in 2020-21, the COVID year, it was Milosh and John Leonard, right? Everyone remembers the John Leonard hype train, right? And
I still love John Leonard.
And then, the NHL doesn't love him, unfortunately.
No,
and then
maybe. He's still got a shot. He's kicking around somewhere.
He's still young enough, yeah. 2021-22, obviously that was Eklund and Weatherby and Jonathan Dolan. And
the good time Sharks.
Yeah, it was a promising month there.
It was a promising few
those
games,
guys, yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
It was a promising opening night.
But yeah, and so I think it was striking that last year, right? They could have put. I'm sure there's somebody they got to put in to give him his shot, but they tried their best to sign guys and make sure that guys like William Eklund could play 50 games in AHL before his call up.
Sure.
Thomas Bordeleau could prove himself or not prove himself in the time in the AHL. Guys like Gushchin and Robins too, didn't get their shots at the very end of the season. Instead of giving them night one, hey, Tristen Robins, you're our 3C. congratulations, good luck, good luck, kid, so
Yeah, go fight Radko Gudas.
yeah, exactly, right, yeah. So don't yeah. It's very. I think they're totally have the right perspective with Mukhamadullin, and I was gonna. Someone commented, well, what's the difference between Mukhamadullin and Henry Thrun? At least maybe 20 pounds.
Yeah, at least 20 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the difference. Yeah.
I think the thing is with Mukhamadullin, what Quinn was alluding to is like the whole Pronger thing is you don't see dudes that are as tall as he is
that move like him.
That move like him and have hands like him. Like he actually has very good hands for the size defenseman that he is. And you don't want to ruin that. So I think they're all kind of being cautious because if you put this kid in the NHL too early at his size and the way that he plays the game, you can ruin him.
You can. We talked about the Miracle Mueller thing, right?
Yeah.
Like recently. So yeah, no, absolutely.
So yeah, I think the best thing for him is probably down in the AHL, and I think that it's interesting that Quinn shut this down so early because we still have.
I think that's very interesting. No, I think that's because we would have talked about for another week. Because honestly, even though I think what I think, right, I'm not the coaching staff, I'm not my career, so they can decide what they want, right, apart from what I think, right, and so I do think that was calculated, because he didn't want it to get away from Quinn wanted to kind of control that story a little bit and not let it get too like because that's even though Mukhamadulin's English isn't phenomenal, though it's much better than it was last year. We actually talked with him. I want to give Mook credit on that again, but someone starts to say something to him, and he expects to be in NHL when again just wait. I think it'll be for the best. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that he's going to be in the AHL the entire year either. I think he'll
right. And I'd say too. I want to say one more thing too, just complimentary about Mukhamadullin. Like when the Sharks traded for him, I think the projection from people was this guy is going to be a top 4 defenseman, but maybe more middle pairing. But I gotta say, watching his just everything he can do, like I think there is. I would not rule out. I don't know if it's likely because it's hard to be a 1-2 defenseman in this league, right? It's obviously there's very few true, top pairing guys out there, right? But I wouldn't rule it out though because that physical package, like I said, we talk about the size and the skating and the reach is very impressive and. He is a very good puck mover. That's actually what he's probably best at, and so if he can just learn to defend, actually, Quinn said something funny. He said that if he can be half as mean as Chris Pronger, then, we've got something. And that's actually not wrong. We've seen that so far in scrimmages. Like, Mukhamadullin is not the most physical defender. And that's probably because he's still probably, not confident in terms of his size, in terms of his mass, right? He obviously is tall, but he's not big, right? But also too, he may not be kind of he doesn't strike me as being the meanest guy. And not that he doesn't have to be Radko Gudas, the butcher. He doesn't have to be Chris Pronger, but he does need to be a certain degree of aggressiveness to be a great NHL defenseman, right? And not just a guy that is like kind of leaves you wanting more defenseman, which I could see Mukhamadullin ending up as a guy you see all this physical package, puts up points, right? Like Tyler Myers maybe in his peak, right? Yeah. But kind of leaves you wanting more though to some degree, right? And so Mukhamadullin can end up being a guy like that. But if he's able to kind of up the defensive, anyway, if that catches up to the offense and both of those things grow together, I wouldn't rule out, Mukhamadullin being, like a actual star player. And so,
you don't want to mess it up. You want to give him enough time to marinate. And the Barracuda also could really use him on the power play. So, yeah.
Well, they might have Henry Thrun and Mukhamadullin on power play.
Oh,
so they might
true. They might have both.
and Gawanke. And Jacob MacDonald.
I think Who knows? Gawanke might go
Actually,
back to
between McDonald and
Germany.
Gawanke as on your top AHL power play unit, you're gonna be pretty set.
Barracuda are going to be stacked back there.
They could
All right.
be.
Our
They could be.
goaltenders for the Sharks are going to be Mackenzie
Yeah,
Blackwood
they're
and
set.
Capo
We don't have to
Kakkonen.
talk about those guys. Yeah, so
I know. Unless something they claim
injury
another
or
goalie,
something.
injury, trade, something
Right,
weird.
right. I could see them during final cutdowns. Throughout the league, maybe they'll claim a veteran goalie if Makiniemi's not available. So
Sure. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
because they're kind of
Makiniemi's still
like,
working his way back. Yeah.
yeah, they're a little lean right now. Because Makiniemi's possibly in or out, and then you've got Romanov and Krona, who
Who have never
new.
played an AHL game. So
All right, let's do our projected roster.
okay. So
Let's do it.
okay, well, so let's start first with Logan Couture. And we'll run off the obvious names, and then the ones that are kind of debatable, I guess we'll just briefly talk about why they're in. And so Hoffman, Couture, Barabanov, Hurdle, Declare, Zadina, Granlund, Kunin, Zetterlund, Sturm, and LeBanc. And the
Sure.
other two guys we have 13 forwards on our projected 23-man roster, Eklund and Smith. And before we
Yeah.
talk about Eklund and Smith, because I know those were our bubble guys before, I did want to say with Zetterlund that Zetterlund, based on what he showed last year, he probably should be more on the tweener list because he wasn't very good
Sure.
for the Sharks. But based on his scouting reports before, and also, again, his place in the Timo Meier trade. It wasn't the centerpiece like Mukhamadullin, the first round pick, but he was a key piece of the Timo Meier trade that like he's gonna get that sort of that rope at least this year. If he puts up another year like he put up with the Sharks, which equates pro rates to 0 goals and like 13
5
assists.
points. Yeah, 10 points on that.
In 82 games, then yes, Zetterlund is going to be gonzo, but yeah, so he's safe, but yeah, like he definitely needs to show something this year. But anyway, with Eklund, like I said, we talked at length that I don't think he's been exceptional so far in camp, and I do think he needs to get there, but I think he will reach it. I have a faith in that. With Smith, I think it's just the element that he brings, right, that no one else brings, that I think is valuable, and is also, if you put it on waivers, somebody might pick up. Though he does have a 2-year contract too, so that might make him a little less attractive on waivers. But he's a minimum player, pretty much, or close to that. So
yeah, I just don't think there's anybody else that brings it. So I think they have.
Yeah,
to
exactly. He has that role, and I think that they do think he's a better fit. That's my perception. They think he's a better fit than VL and Gadjevich were in terms of just his style of play, his pace,
I've only seen
skating.
His game, the one game that he played, or did he play 2? I can't remember.
He played 1, I think. Yeah,
1. He looked good. Like he actually has like a lot of pace to his game. So, basically, so that's and the interesting is we're carrying 13 forwards instead of 14. Most teams carry 14 and 7D, but because the Sharks have so many D men,
well, a lot of people do 13-7-2 too. So,
13-7-2 or 13-7-3.
Yeah. Yeah, well, rarely the third goalie, but still, like,
sometimes.
Yeah, because a cap or whatever, right? Some
cap.
teams will just go, 12,
22.
7, and 2 or whatever, right? But anyway, though, we're gonna go with 8 defensemen though, because the Sharks do not have cap problems.
Nope.
And so, so the 5 sure things are Ferraro, Ruda, Vlasic, Benning, and Burrows. And our 3 sort of on the bubble guys are Thrun, Knyzhov, and Okhotiuk. And Thrun is just again like Eklund. We think that he's going to be good enough that he can't keep a good man down, kind of thing, right? And they don't gain as much from the AHL as Mukhamadullin would, I think. Thrun is, like I said, more just physically developed, and so Thrun has only had a cup of coffee in the NHL, and so sure, he's not that much more experienced than Mukhamadullin at the North American, like the pro North American game. But I just think Thrun is more mature, physically, but also too just mentally too, just as a leader, that sort of thing. Like Thrun, just when you talk with him, he strikes you as a future leader. Whereas Mukhamadullin, seems like a great kid, but seems like a kid still, And
Yep.
so I think that's another plus in Thrun's favor if we're comparing Thrun to Mukhamadullin. And Knyzhov and Okhotiuk, I think a lot of it is just that they are not waiver exempt. Okhotiuk, I feel pretty confident that they will want to see what they have. Knyzhov, they might try to pass through the waivers. I can see that, but
Sure.
I think that they will want to see what Knyzhov has this year. If he has, if he is indeed back on track. I don't think they'll give up on him quite so quickly. And
Yeah,
they might mid-season, but yeah.
and both those guys are serviceable enough above the guys that would get waived in this scenario.
You think? We
Or
think so.
yeah, at least mostly, I would say. So the
Yeah,
guys that
yeah.
would be waived or traded or injured or wherever, but not on the 23-minute roster.
And yeah, again, just to repeat, we have Blackwood and Cacton as our goalie, so that's
Yeah,
we're going
never.
13, 8, and 2. So
Yeah, so it would be Oscar Lindblom would be injured, waived, or traded.
he's
Jacob
not getting
Peterson,
traded with his contract, probably.
probably not.
Oh, okay.
Peterson,
Well, yeah.
MacDonald, Gawanke,
Say the names
Simek,
first, yeah, and then we'll talk about him. Yeah,
and then
Lindblom, Peterson, McDonald, Gawanke, Simek. Yep.
yep, and then Bordeleau and Mukhamadullin would be going down. To
Yeah,
the
waiver
AHL.
exempt, so it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and they would be going down as capacity waivers. So, we could talk a little bit about those guys. That would
Yeah,
be,
I mean, we have to some degree, but yeah, I mean, I would say that Lindblom and Simek, we talked about this, sort of their contracts make it, unlikely that they're tradable or would be claimed by waivers, which could make it more attractive for waivers in that sense. I think though
MacDonald
that
and Gawanke are like 1-year contracts that anybody could claim if they wanted.
right,
But
but
I
I
don't think
don't
the Sharks would
know if
be. Yeah, too bad
yeah,
if they get claimed.
right.
Basically. And then
And
Peterson would be
Peterson
the
is
only
sneaky.
one.
I know you like Peterson more
Yeah.
than I do.
I like him, and I
But
think the issue is that there's a possibility that he's claimed and then he actually is good, and we just didn't get enough time with him. So, but who knows? Could
possible.
also be that he's not
I would
claimed at all.
predict, call you. You can definitely call me out on this if I'm wrong, but I don't. I'm not buying on him. So,
Sure.
this is my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that also too with Peterson that guys of his profile aren't usually just very attractive on waivers because again he's a guy that unless you have a ready-made spot like in your top 9, right? You give him some power play time. Like I'm not sure what he's doing for you. Whereas like I said, a guy like Lindblom, like McDonald, even or Simek, they kind of offer role player things, right?
Yeah.
That I can see being McDonald especially with his contract. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's tough. Lindblom and Simek are guys that you normally wouldn't think would be on waivers just because of their contracts, and just that shows what a team believes, how much a team believes in them. But
Sure.
obviously, Simek was a different regime that signed him, and the Sharks are deeper this year, and so
Yeah, especially up front.
yep,
For
especially up
Lindblom.
front,
Yeah. And
and
also
so.
so many guys in the back end too. It's just
Yeah.
not like that they're deep in the fact that they have a bunch of, third pairing and below
Yeah.
defensemen.
So I guess I would say finally in closing, before we get to we're going to talk about one more thing, guys, after our 23-man roster. Just a brief rundown of guys that are still in camp, but we don't think are close to the Sharks. But just a quick discussion about impressions of some of them, like Danil Gushchin and Georgi Romanov and stuff like that, or Romanov, I think it's pronounced. But anyway, though, just a closing thought for me about these group of players that I think they're going to try to pass through waivers. I just want to remind everybody that we're having a discussion on September 28th. The podcast will be out the next day. We're still pretty early in camp, and can I see a Lindblom, finally showing some of that offense that was sort of promised, right?
Sure.
Simek is a pro. There's a lot to like about there's everything to like about Simek except for his contract and also his injury. How injury prone he is. But in terms of just being a pro and also being a guy guy that always gives his all out there, right? And is can be a punishing hitter, be physical, right? He adds that element that the Sharks didn't have so much of last year, and now maybe they have more of like a guy like Okhotiuk around. But so I can see them kind of turning themselves into players that you must keep, by the end of camp, and then in that case you have ready-made guys to send down, right? Like
Sure.
Eklund and Thrun, that there's no harm to your roster.
Yeah, or say somebody like Eklund doesn't, take the next step throughout training camp, and then Peterson does.
Sure, or
Eklund goes
Peterson,
down,
right.
Peter comes up. So like,
Right.
but it
right.
has to be somebody like that, like a skill guy for Peterson to step in.
for
basically.
for Eklund, but for Peterson, like Peterson's fit. So
Yeah.
anyway, so we'll see basically, so like this is just our guess right now. We can do this episode next week, and
Might be different.
might look a bit different. Yeah.
Sure. Or they, claim somebody on waivers or something.
Yeah, or someone
Who
gets
knows?
hurt, right? Yeah, I'm wondering about Ty Smith. We talked about him in a Carlson.
Add another left-handed defenseman to the into the pool for the Sharks.
They need a power play quarterback. I know
They do.
that Thrun has looked fine in the preseason,
Sure.
but it really is just a preseason. No one projects long term Henry Thrun as your PP1 quarterback. Like
Sure.
that's again, putting a guy in an
Way
unfair
above his
position.
station.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if that's advisable. Maybe you can protect the Thrun with all the forwards that are around him that are
Sure.
that are top 6 competent forwards. But anyway, though, yeah. So that's so I wonder about that. We'll see. We'll know tomorrow, obviously. So by the time you hear this, we'll know if Ty
true.
Smith is a Shark. So
Or if Spencer Martin is a goaltender for the Sharks or something.
I think that's a little early. I think the goalies are going to wait because goalies, a lot of times teams, might sneak them in the final cutdowns, and so there's going to be guys available. So I'm still bated breath for the Martin Jones Sharks reunion. So.
So the let's get a couple quick impressions about some guys that we didn't mention above, but then we can get out of here before my headphones die, and also
it is very late where you are, so yeah.
Very late where I am. So first guy, my favorite guy, Danil Gushchin, had an assist in the last preseason game. Good for him on the power play. He actually got a lot of compliments from the Ducks broadcast about his play on the power play, which is interesting. I thought he looked good on the power play. But the issue was...
Did you listen to the Ducks broadcast?
Yeah, I listened to the Ducks.
I did too, yeah. I was not sure what Emerson Edom, he was the color commentator, what he said. I don't remember precisely what he said about Gushchin, but he was very, very complimentary. I think he basically called Gushchin the Sharks' best player last night, which I don't know if I quite agree with, but, I mean...
Yeah, it wasn't
somebody
a very
said
stacked roster. But somebody didn't say it. And Quinn even said he had a good game, or a better game than he's had before. But the rest
he called
of his
it a big
training
step forward.
camp,
He called it a big step forward, yeah.
Rest of training camp hasn't been great.
Right, a big step forward means that
the rest of it wasn't good.
the steps before were not so good. And I asked Quinn a very direct question about it. I asked him, just paraphrasing, I asked about Gushchin today, and I asked, in my opinion, that Gushchin has really just been okay throughout, rookie faceoff included, and in scrimmages and in practices, and in his first preseason game too, just okay at best. So basically not very good. And Quinn didn't push back at all on that, and he said, yeah. And then I asked, did Danil really need a game like last, like Wednesday, right? And Quinn said, yeah, he did, and then he said, yeah, it was a big step forward, the best game that he's had so far, even going back to rookie face-off, right? And I would say, just overall impressions about Gushchin so far, like I was, to be honest, hoping to see like a noticeable bump in his strength and quickness. And it might be there subtly, but I don't see it obviously. And he's going to need that, no matter the skill he has, or sort of, willingness to go into tough areas at times, He's gonna need more of that. And so yeah, so I would say that yeah, like his arrow, at least so far, is not trending up, and it might,
Yeah,
like I said, we have plenty of time. We have 2 weeks left in camp.
sure.
And he's waiver exempt, so there's no harm, no foul, and
Yeah,
it is
it's
probably
always
best
been
for him.
my expectation that he wouldn't make the Sharks this
Oh,
year
sure,
anyway.
absolutely not. Yeah, I don't
Like
think anyone
I
really thought
never
so.
I think there was like a lot of hype because he had, a good stretch at the end of the year last
I
year,
think though
but I
that
think
I
it
think
was
I
a
would
little bit too
like to have
much.
seen.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't, I don't have hype or whatever. I don't think
sure.
about that or feel that.
Hmm.
But I just would have liked to have seen him make a better case for himself
Yeah.
up to this point, which he hasn't. And he, like I said,
Yep.
he might in the next 2 weeks. But based on last year, like I didn't know, I did not expect him to break camp with the Sharks. But would it
Hmm.
be nice if he was there at the last minute? Like he was good
Sure.
enough where it actually becomes a serious thought.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're hoping for,
Yeah, where he's in the cuts of
realistically what you're hoping for. Yeah.
he's in like the last cuts with like your Bordeleau and your like
Right.
instead of being like with your Robins and Cardwell and all
And
those guys and stuff,
Gushin may still, like I said, we have 2 weeks
Who
left,
knows?
so he
Yeah.
may get there. But right now, though, right now, the next wave of cutdowns, yeah,
It might
like
be him. Yeah.
he would be in it. He wouldn't be making it to or to Europe. Like last year, that was a big thing, right? To make it to
Yeah.
Europe,
To
right?
make it to Europe.
Yeah. So yeah, at this point, he would
Maybe the
not
one
be.
game was enough to get him like extended a little bit more time,
Oh, sure. I
Yeah.
don't think cutdowns. I think they're. What did they
Maybe next Monday.
say? Yeah. I think they're gonna have one more game. Krona's gonna get that start. Should get that start, and then yeah. So there's a little more. He has time. Maybe not two. I shouldn't say 2 weeks. He has like 5 days.
Anyway, so Wiesblatt and Robbins, I think, or well, let's talk about Wiesblatt first. I think
Sure.
he's shown well. I think
Yes.
he's improved his game to be a professional hockey player. I'll put it that
Hmm.
way, an AHL professional at the time being.
Right.
If you remember, he wasn't, and you remember, but if everybody doesn't remember, he wasn't that way. Like at the beginning of the year last year, he
Oh
was in and
yeah.
out of the lineup. He was
He
not
was in
considered.
Wichita. He was in
Yeah,
ECHL for a day.
exactly. So it's impressive that he's improved that much to basically turn his game around. He looks good. He's fast. He's pesty. He's feisty. But I think he will be sent down in the next round of cuts
He
probably.
also has a more of a willingness to play inside and
Hmm.
uses additional. He said he added like 7 pounds of muscle, and you could see noticeable
Sure.
difference with him, and to use that to attack inside, and what we question sometimes with like a Bordeleau and to a lesser degree with Gushchin, right? Like Weisblot has kind of shown a willingness to use like to just be to go to those dirty areas. He just
Hmm.
doesn't have the natural skill of the players that we mentioned. But
Sure.
yeah, I think that he has made a positive showing in the rookie face-off and so far in camp. I'd like to see him get one more game. I don't think he's anything close to NHL ready, but I think though that he has put himself back on the map of maybe there is a bottom six role in his future in the
Mm.
NHL, maybe. Not right now, but
Yep.
maybe. I think part of it too is, and we've talked about this. I think he has embraced more the just who he has to be at the higher levels.
Yep. Yep. It's gonna
He's
need
not.
to, yeah,
Yeah, he's
adjust
not.
a little bit.
He's not. I mean, of course, he doesn't want to forget that. Oh, I used to score at Prince Albert. You don't want to forget that completely, but I think he's embraced more that I've got to be a certain kind of way, and that may not include being on the top power play unit, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And so I think that's one of the things that will help him too.
Hmm. Robbins is an interesting one, and Robbins has had an interesting training camp. He got into a fight. He almost fought Radko Gudas, like
He
we
didn't
mentioned a
almost
few
find.
times. No, I'm gonna play it.
That's
I'm gonna
not.
say that Gudas
I,
backed down from that fight. That's my
Yeah.
canon.
I'm not gonna dog Robbins, but I'm not
No,
gonna say he almost got into a fight. He didn't almost get in
yeah.
a fight there.
So he almost got into an ER somewhere for being
Yeah.
beaten. Anyway, but he's had like he's been good. He's a versatile forward. I
Mm.
think it's an interesting thing. I think he's well not good, but he's been fine. And I like his versatility in a lineup. Like he does have a little bit of like he can play in winger center. He's decent
Sure, he does have
defensively.
versatility. Yeah.
He has versatility. He doesn't have like a ton
Yeah.
of skill, like not enough like
Right,
high
and
end
that's
skill.
what you kind of
But
hope for, being
mhm,
a second round pick, and also where he was drafted, and he's put up points at the AHL level,
sure.
and I expect him to continue to do that. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to translate though. I guess
Hmm.
I made the face because I actually do like Tristan in the sense of I think that he also has done a better job of embracing like Ozzy, like just like this is what I've got to be at this level.
Sure.
I can't be, skillsy. I can't be that guy here, so
Yeah.
I think he has embraced that. And so I think that is going to help him. And I do can see him sort of topping out as like a 4C maybe. It's
Hmm.
obviously his size is going to be a limitation there, but
Yeah.
his work ethic and his skating,
Yep.
that's going to be a plus for him in that regard. But in terms of just his overall camp performance, though, like has he jumped out? Not
Not really.
particularly. Like,
Sure.
and Quinn made the sort of backhanded compliment when asked about him recently. Oh yeah, he was better, much better this game than in the last game, or he was, noticeably better, or whatever. I don't know exactly what Quinn said, but basically that Robbins was much better in his second
Hmm.
game than the first game, which tells you that his first game wasn't very good. and
Yep.
and so
I see a lot of like maybe Dylan Gambrell and Robbins, which is
oh
like
yeah,
not a
that's
great
actually a pretty
compliment, but
fair
like
fair comp. Yeah, I can see
kind of
that.
like maybe your 4C kind of sticking around. He's versatile. You can put him in a lineup. He's not going to do you much harm. That's kind of what
Yeah,
I see
Gambrel's a
Robbins.
little bit bigger, long, but
He
I
is a
can
little
see
bit
what you're
bigger.
saying though. Yeah, like
Yeah.
Gambrel looked like he should have been maybe a little better
Hmm.
defensively at least, and I don't think that quite happened. And there
Sure.
wasn't enough offense to,
Really do much of
uh,
anything. But
yeah, to be a third line center even. But
mhm.
I guess no, I guess his defense is fine though. Yeah, because it was because Gambrel is stuck around as like a four
Yeah.
C, and so yeah, so just that the offense really. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is talking about Robbins. I don't know if Robbins is good enough defensively though. So Gambrel
Mm.
is a decent comp, but I think that Gambrel's tools too, right? Like
A little bit
skating and
better. Sure.
size and whatever, right? Like made him like at least like okay, well we can't put him on a power play or anything, but we can use him defensively. Well, I'm not sure if
Hmm. Robbins
Robbins
got a better
will
shot if
maybe
that counts. He has a
right
better
right, but
shot, but
that doesn't
it
do
doesn't
you
do
so
much.
much in the 4C role, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I don't know,
He
maybe though.
he's
Maybe. I
a
mean, he works hard
yeah.
and he is like, he is probably faster than Gambrell, and if he can get stronger, he can be one of those
Hmm.
small strong guys. So
He's
I'm
a
not putting it past Robbins, but I
better
would say
fighter,
that
you
the
know.
ceiling has sort of been maybe a little bit lowered on him though, and maybe he'll prove
Sure.
us wrong. He is a very hard worker, so he might prove us wrong. But I mean, that's
Yeah.
sort of how I think
Could
he's
also
regarded right
be
now. So
yeah, it could be a guy that needs a couple more years in the AHL before he really does take a versatile
maybe,
or
yeah.
like because of his versatility step into an NHL lineup.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
maybe. And it's always he can default back to his fighting skill, which is, very very good. Anyway, another guy that I don't think has had particularly great camp is Nick Cicek or
Yeah.
Cicek. Kind of came out of nowhere past year or two to basically playing NHL games last year. Looked okay during it, and then went to the Barracuda afterwards and I think he had like 2 assists for like 30 games or something like that, and he just was
But even
not
more importantly, just I
didn't
think
look
his
good.
defense, yeah,
Yeah,
like that suffered. I'm not sure. Sometimes I don't know. Maybe it's a confidence thing or whatnot. But yeah,
sure.
I agree that like since his sort of his rise, right,
Hmm.
that his play hasn't improved and actually probably has
Gone down a
gone
little.
down a
Yeah,
notch. Yeah. So yeah, he wasn't hasn't really stood out so far in camp or
sure.
in the second preseason game he played. So yeah, it's not looking great so far for him in camp for sure.
Get a few more Gannon Laroque, which is an interesting decision that they have to make probably pretty soon, of whether or not he's going to be going to the WHL or stick in the AHL.
I would
Um,
predict that fairly certain that he will. But the reason why I want to talk about him is because he has shown, kind of a bit more puck moving. I've been pleasantly surprised by his ability to move the puck, vision, make some plays. Right. I think his skating is still a bit rough and rougher so than before his hip surgeries, and so that's going to be something that he's got to come back from. I'm pretty sure they're going to send him back. I just don't think he's quite ready, but maybe they like him more than I do at the moment. But
it's hard to know. We've gotten kind of not mixed signals, but like mixed messaging on it a little bit. I remember there was an expectation that he would play AHL, and now it's like maybe.
Well,
maybe not.
that was
Not
that expectation
is-
was years ago before he had double hip surgery. And before he played 4 games last year, so
I need to rewatch our Todd Marchant interview because I thought I remember hearing him say something about it.
Okay,
But anyway.
I don't believe so. I think the thing was he was going to be ready for dev camp, which was or not dev camp for rookie faceoff. Maybe you're right though. I'll listen back to just make sure we didn't miss anything there, a clue about what they might do with Laroque. But anyway though,
I think he's looked good. I do agree that I think his skating is still a concern.
He's looked better than maybe I thought he might after playing so little last year. So I'm gonna give him that. I think that
still a smart player.
Yeah. I think he has a lot to sort of make up for or get back. He's still not quite back on the road. It's still a little bit of a distance there, but I could see him making that up this year. So
the other consideration is they could keep him in the AHL for kind of like a conditioning and rehab year, almost like you're playing, but you're mostly working on trying to get faster, trying to get stronger, trying to get back into like the speed of missing so much time kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. They kind of did that with Wiesblatt, I think, last year. So that's true. That's a fair point. I didn't really think of it that way. Yeah, there's no real roster limitation.
Because you can't really do that at WHL where you're playing all the time and you're on the road and in buses and
Right. I guess that it might depend on what day. Because if I recall correctly with Wiesblatt, he had the shoulder stuff, but they sort of thought it'd be better for him to just stay in San Jose and and focus on getting stronger and stuff instead of playing games. So with at the WHL. So yeah, actually that's a pretty good point. That might be might be what they're thinking. Yeah, for sure.
Touched on a few goalies. Romanov, I thought looked interesting. He had like in the beginning of the first period of his game that he played, I was like, wow, Romanov looks good, and then he let in like 2 goals straight back to back.
Well,
as soon as
I don't think he was really tested though.
Well, he had like a few saves that I was like, okay, pretty decent.
Yeah.
He's athletic. He's quick. He's rangy. He looks
huge.
He's big. Yeah.
And did you see that picture that the Sharks posted of him getting on the plane next to Gushchin and Okhotiuk?
It's amazing.
It's an amazing
He's
picture.
Big.
Yeah, that looks like the sequel to what's that Billy Crystal movie, My Giant. So.
My Giant. But he wasn't. He let in a really, I think, a bad 5-hole goal. And
he was not. He was not very good. But then Quinn gave him a bit of a pass, and I think fairly so. Like first ever NHL game. The ice. That's a big adjustment for goalies that come from overseas. Just the dimensions, right, and just how much quicker things are here because the players have less space. So the puck's gonna just get on you, quicker. So I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know if there's too much to draw from that first game. We'll see. I'm still forming my opinion about him, and
it's a good bet though. It's an interesting pickup for the Sharks.
Yeah, it's an interesting bet. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I will say one thing about Romanov that he was good in the scrimmages, and I will say that when they signed him, no idea, right? Never watched him in the VHL, right? And who knew what they were getting, right? I would say that after the first few days, I would say that he does belong at this level and sort of the AHL development level. Like the tools are there, the height obviously, but also the quickness and athleticism. And so this wasn't a kind of guy that you sign and you watch like, why the hell did they sign this guy? It's like
Yeah.
every once in a while, a team will sign somebody and then you watch him and like,
I have a specific
yeah.
goaltender prospect recently that comes to mind, but
I'm not sure. I don't know if I would even put that guy. If you mean like Melnichuk, I'm not even sure. Like, I
no,
don't
not
know.
because
Oh,
like they pulled him out of that's literally out of nowhere. It's a Q guy that was signed. Can't remember his last name. Not signed. They drafted and then oh my god, what's his name?
Amon.
Damon. Thank you so much.
Amon was incredible the year they drafted him, at least
I know
statistically.
stats wise, and then
he went like 27-1 or something like that.
man, his like every time I watched Amon play in any of the dev camps, scrimmages, training camps, I was like,
Yeah, it
oh
was
my
rough.
god,
It was rough.
yeah.
It was rough. It was rough.
Sorry,
yeah.
buddy.
Yeah, he didn't quite develop obviously
No.
as they hoped. Whereas Romanov definitely has tools. I'm just actually
Yeah.
curious. Amon did. I'm just gonna. I don't want to totally
Derail this. I wonder what he's
yeah.
doing.
Amon did sign with AHL. Actually, it looks like he's gonna form. He might form a duel with Strauss Mann. I think.
Oh,
They
really?
both sign in Laval. Yeah, they
In
both sign in
Laval?
Laval. Yeah,
Oh, look at
and then
that.
Caden Primo's there too. So maybe Amon is ticketed for their ECHL. But he got
Yeah.
signed at least though. So it's not like he did not
He's
get
in
signed. So
Europe or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Give him some credit. Yeah.
Anyway. And then Makiniemi's injured. That's our.
Yeah,
That's our
I'm
roundup.
gonna re-enter the picture just to finish up. Yeah, Makiniemi is our last guy, so thanks for hanging here with us and staying awake, Keegan. But anyone
I'm
else
awake.
who's listened this far, Makiniemi, I think it's interesting that so the Sharks have already planned out their schedule. You know, like Krona, Quinn told us that Krona should start the next game. Basically, he didn't say when, but you can assume so because then there's 2 more preseason games, which usually are kind of your tune-up games, which basically Kakinen and Blackwood are going to get. And so I think it's interesting that we see nothing from Makiniemi. And Makiniemi, too, interestingly, was kept away from all the scrimmages.
Mm-hmm.
And he is part of practice, but I think they're being pretty careful with him.
Interesting.
So I wonder if we'll see him even in the Barracuda the preseason games. I'm not sure what the Barracuda preseason schedule is, but should know that. But anyway, though, yeah. So until we see him in game action, I think it's really hard to say that where exactly he's at. And by the way, the Barracuda have 2 exhibition games, October 6th and October 7th, and then they start the season on October 13th. And so so if Makiniemi doesn't play in either of those exhibition games, if they go with Romanov and Krona, then that's going to be obviously very telling. I don't know if they'll just throw Makiniemi out opening night, out of nowhere. So
Yeah. All right, Sheng. I've got to go to sleep.
Yep, you do.
I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. We will be back next week, probably with all again preseason roster talk and all of everything we said.
Are projecting a very exciting guest. I've been working
true.
on it for a couple of weeks here, so we'll see. But we think we can. We'll lock it down next week. So
yeah, I'm excited about that one too.
Yeah.
It's on brand for what we were just talking about. To spoil it, anyway. All right, guys. Have a good week.